Eat your banana. I live here in Kenya with my daughter, who's 2.5. We live kind of together with all of our neighbors, and it's sort of a very communal, kind of extended family, really.
And me? No. I'll come.
Okay, ready for bath? We live in a small village, not terribly far from Mombasa, and it's a really communal area. Okay, ready for school. There comes the boat, Nian. Do you see the boat? There it is. I've been here in Kenya for almost 8 years now, and it's basically become home for me. I first came to Kenya with the U.S. Peace Corps, so I was teaching in a secondary school. And prior to that, in the U.S., I had been studying econophysics. So I'd been getting very much into economics as a development tool. And so out of being a teacher here, I got very, very interested in how to create more jobs, because a lot of my students were getting through school, but they weren't able to find jobs at all in Kenya. The employment rate is really horrible here. What I saw was a lot of extremely bright students that would pass all the exams and do amazingly well, and were as smart as many of the kids I met at Stanford when I was there. And yet, when they finish school, there's nothing for them. There's no jobs or anything. I feel like I had this huge luck of, where did I grow up? And here you've got millions of people growing up in a situation where they're just not that lucky. And what a huge waste, because every one of these kids in Kenya could have been me. So right now we're in Bangladesh, just outside Mombasa. It's an informal settlement or slum, which means most of the people living here don't have property rights. What you see here is about 20,000 people live in this very small area. It's incredibly crowded, and people are generally working as day laborers for very, very little money at the industrial zones for the imports and exports into Nairobi. The standard in Kenya is much the same as the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, where 50 up to 80% even of the job market is informal, so people aren't paying taxes, and really people are sort of not even introduced into the regular economy. They're living day to day on the cash that they have. They're buying their groceries every single day, and if they don't have money that day, they're not going to eat. If these external markets, like the shipments of imports all the way to Nairobi, for some reason stop, and they quite often do, there's no more money in the system. There's a huge amount of casual labor that needs to be done. So for instance, fixing roads, fixing buildings, painting, fixing roofs. There's a huge amount of work to be done that's just simply not done. And at the same time, there's a huge, huge amount of 18 to 35-year-olds sitting around doing nothing constantly. Alcoholism is a huge problem, but essentially there's no one there to pay them to do any of these jobs. The kind of aha moment was, can we get these two to meet? There's all this supply, there's all this demand, yet there's nothing in the middle. There's no medium of exchange there. So the idea is to allow communities to back their own medium of exchange, their own currency, with their own goods and services.
It is now official. Residents of Bangladesh can now use Bangla-Pesa vouchers to conduct their business. The project has 200 members, and they use the vouchers to buy goods or take them on credit.
The printed vouchers range from 5 to 200 notes. The notes bear the name of the project, different symbols depicting the lifestyle of the residents of Bangladesh.
Emma! How are you? It's good to see you.
Happy to see you. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm good. Emma Onyango, she's one of the businesses that we work with in Bangladesh. Actually, she's a widow and takes care of her children by herself, and she also takes care of the entire family of her deceased husband. So she's got a huge amount of burden on her, and at the same time, her only income is really from water. And then how much do you charge them?
1 jerrycan full of water is 5 shillings. That is 5 shillings community money. Okay. The community money's value is the same as our Kenya money. If it is 5 shillings Bangla-Pesa, that is the community money, it is 5 shillings Kenya money. So this is how we do it. And this water is used for washing clothes, utensils, for mopping the house, and it really assists even when there is no water when there is no tap water.
How much Bangla-Pesa do you have now?
I have a lot of money today because there was no tap water, and people came with Bangla-Pesa. I have almost 100 and
This
something.
is all almost from today?
Yeah, this is from today. There's no water. This
40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So 280.
Yeah, and I'm still expecting more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to use this for?
I'm going to buy tomatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at night hours, I'm also going to eat. So I'll pay it back to them so that I can get my daily.
So by the end of tonight, you'll have almost none?
Yeah, by the end of when it comes to dark,
Yeah.
I'll already go to do shopping with it.
And then tomorrow you'll get more
I'm
again.
going
So
to
it's
eat
just it's
fish.
coming and going.
I'm going to eat fish. I'm going to buy maize flour, and then things will be okay.
If someone is collecting a lot of the currency and they're not able to spend it, that's a problem. So we want to go in there and make sure that they know where to spend it. Bariako. Wapi mama We do a lot of this work the few months to a year after the launch of the currency, and eventually kind of hand over this to the community itself. The communities see that their community currency is much more of a spending and daily usage currency. So they can survive on it, they can eat with it, they use it for a lot of their food, they use it for local school fees, but then when they want to save money and they want to invest in their business or import and export items or send their kids off to college, that's when they need their Kenyan shillings, their national currency. So we kind of see it as a savings currency versus a spending currency.
This place was just soily. It was risky. Somebody could even fall down here and die. I was even worried, how am I going to drain water from this my place? When the rain comes, this place was open, and each and every day I used to check inside. Has any animal come there, died in the water? How is it going to be? But after getting this community currency, I managed to save more Kenya money. I've bought the cement. I've tried to cement it. Though I'm still working on it, it is not yet complete. It has helped me a lot because even my house was not a house at all. I've started building my house now. It is looking like something. I was the poorest person you could ever see. And even eating was a problem. I could not eat daily. I only used to eat once. You see me, I'm looking like a woman now. I could not talk where people were talking. Because actually, if you have nothing to eat, you are hungry, how can you talk in front of people? You'll faint. Yeah, we had nothing. He has brought us from nowhere to somewhere. Through Will, we have known that anything which can act in the buying and selling of trade goods and services is money.
I left high school when I was very young. I took a proficiency exam and started university when I was about 15. I did a lot of different things. I did music, I did oceanography, and then I got into computer science. I started programming when I was very, very young on these old Commodore 64 computers. And so as soon as I started university, I got recruited by a computer company in Silicon Valley called Borland. At 15, I had a big office, and the money from that job paid my entire college all the way up to my PhD in physics. With physics, I was doing my research at the Stanford Linear Accelerator, and what we did there was we're looking at matter-antimatter collisions and trying to understand what are the fundamental constants of the universe and how are they broken or asymmetric in different ways. And to me, it was this idea that we're getting to something very, very fundamental about nature itself. I had a professor that was also very interested in economics. So much of our human interaction is based on economics. Econophysics uses the tools of physics to say, what are some of those fundamental rules of interaction of people in the same way we would say, what are the fundamental rules of interactions of particles? And if you put enough of those people together, can you actually model a small economy? And if you can, then what rules govern how people interact in that economy? So that was what was very exciting to me. It was sort of taking the science of physics, but actually having some real-life application. No longer kind of being in an ivory tower and feeling like, you know, there was a whole possibility to change human interaction, and that we have a knob to do it. And currency itself, how money is issued, was the heart of that knob, you know, the heart of what can change to actually affect a huge part of who we are as humans. This is a simulation of a very simple market where everyone's trading with each other, and each person across here, this is their balance. So these little blue lines are 100 people. This is how much money they've got in their pocket. And down here, this is the amount of inequality in the system, and this is kind of how much they're trading together. So these people in the market, they're also trading with each other all the time. And so if we just kind of let that play here, we can see that over time, some shops are more preferred than others. So you get some people who have quite a bit more money than others. And this is just normal. This is what happens when someone has a shop that has rotten potatoes. You know, this person is making very little money that month, for instance. And this person has something in high demand. And over time, you can see that, you know, it sort of stabilizes. There's a bit of inequality, but this is not really bad inequality. I mean, a Gini index of 12 is better than any country in the world. So this distribution of wealth is actually not a bad distribution at all. This is fine. You know, there's some people that have very little, some people have more, but the difference between the two is not terribly high, and there's this nominal amount of trade going on. Now, what is the simplest thing we can change to this very simple simulation to mimic the inequality we have today? And so all we do is we allowed one of these top vendors to become a bank. And in fact, any of the vendors, when they get enough money, they're allowed to start giving out loans at interest. And all of a sudden, you see a huge, huge jump in the amount of money in the system in general, because actually they're creating money now. We're allowing some for-profit institution now in this village to start to create money. And we can see what happens to the inequality index, and very quickly inequality jumps up to about the level of South Africa. So this is the distribution of wealth in South Africa. We've got about 4 people here who own just about everything. And at the same time, you can see trade really, really starts to drop because people aren't able to pay back those debts. And so this is basically very similar to what we have today. Just by introducing interest-bearing debt on loans with this magnitude, we're able to mimic the inequality we see today. We've given over the power to for-profit private banks. Their goal is really, in a sense, to make sure everyone's in debt, because that's how they're making the profits. It's as if you had given for-profit private banks the ability to produce oxygen that we are all dependent on. That's literally what's basically happened. We need money. Money is something, it's not a bad thing. It's something that we need to interact with one another. It's one of the tools we have as humans. If we give that tool over to private interests for profit, essentially what we're doing is we're sort of chaining ourselves. We're creating sort of an indentured servitude to these large banks and whoever has most of the money. There was always this question, I think everyone has this question, like, how did we get like this? Like, what happened, you know? Why do we live like this? You know, you look around your community and everyone who's going to work every day, and as a kid, and you just wonder, why do you do this? Why do you go to work every day like that? So many people around me don't like their lives. You know, they go to work every day and they're in this sort of like doldrum of existence. These financial systems, they're essentially programmed. We've programmed our society. We're sort of like ants. So there's a few ants that are really benefiting from this system, and the rest of the ants are just workers. And the reciprocity between the two isn't obvious. In Silicon Valley, you get the Bill Gates or Steve Jobs as the elite saviors of the world. And if you make enough money, you can become a philanthropist king. The queen bee, or the queen ant in this case, actually the wealthy aren't giving back to society even a fraction of what they're receiving. And mostly they're hedging all that money away so that they can go live in isolation and live in, you know, their own sort of sanctuaries. There was no reciprocity there. It's sort of like a Don Quixote moment, the idea of fighting back against that. Like, we should all be able to contribute to society in some way. If it's only the elite that get to contribute, it's a very sad world for the rest of us, really. And so, yeah, putting on some armor and running out to a community to save them or something, I see myself somehow foolish in that sense of just like naive or just hoping, you know. And so it's a fool's errand in a sense. It's like, well, it's trying something really new, and you have no idea if it's going to work or not. What we want to do now is introduce a secondary currency. So now we've added another currency here in green to allow these people who are in huge amounts of debt just to trade with each other. And all of a sudden, trade shoots back up and inequality is going back down. So now they're spending their money back into the system. And so this is what we want to see. This is kind of the hope, is that by introducing these secondary currencies, that they restabilize the economy. Within a few weeks of launching it, we got news that one morning there was a front page article that had come out, and it was in the Taifa Leo, implying that it was illegal. The whole program was illegal. And they also equated us with the Mombasa Republican Council, which is like a branch of Al-Shabaab, which is a terrorist organization. They brought in all the local police and military into the community. They began knocking down doors and arresting people.
5 Kenyans, as well as the founder of the project, were arraigned in court over the matter.
And I got about halfway through my PowerPoint, and they grabbed it away from me and said, "This is evidence, and we're putting you in jail." Essentially, they told us we're being charged with forgery, which is a mandatory 7 years in maximum security jail. And so all of us are just, you know, the hearts are just pounding like, oh my God, you know, like, and here I am, the one who had brought this concept. And so it was really, oh my gosh, it was just like, you know, this constant feeling in your stomach of like, you just screwed not only your own life, but this entire community's life. And specifically, you know, there was 6 people that were arrested. So that was horrible. And then do you remember going on trial? Like when we had to go stand in the court?
Yeah. People were telling us that you have a white and you are going to be jailed forever and you are going to be jailed for life because you don't even give money. You just do things without giving bribes to people. You will be jailed and you will be dead, but you are not shaken because we told them, if just changing lives of Kenyans can make us be jailed, let us be jailed.
It was the central bank's fraud department that were the prosecutors. We kept going into court. They would keep deferring forward because they weren't sure how to prosecute us, luckily. And eventually the director of public prosecutions took the case away from them and wrote a letter saying that no law that had been broken. And it recommended that the central bank take these under advisement, that they should come up with some regulatory scheme for these programs. And really since then, we've never heard from the central bank again. We're really happy with the results, and we hope that in the next few months we get everything going again. And we're even hoping we get some support from Parliament also in making these programs so that other poor communities can do them as well. What community currencies, or in the broader field, all these complementary currencies across the whole world could really mean is that it's the end of banking profits on creation of money. And if banks lose that then their entire profit model has to change. And of course, there's going to be a lot of resistance to that. The good thing about this court case was that we got a huge amount of media attention. We were on primetime television for several weeks in a row. So communities all across Kenya knew about Bangla-Pesa and they wanted to know what it was. Within the first year of usage of Bangla-Pesa, we saw roughly 10% of local trade moving through it all of a sudden. And that represented an overall increase of about 10% to even 20% of the local economy. So that was really positive and wasn't reducing Kenyan shilling sales. So just using 400 euros of these vouchers is enough to increase the local economy by something like 20%. That's actually huge. I mean, to say that you were increasing local trade by anything more than 5 to 10% is something that you would never hear about in economics. So it's something really exciting, and it's one of the first times we can even say that that's even possible. So if you can imagine if 400 euros can do that in a very small community, well, how much trade could we facilitate with 4 million euros across Kenya or across East Africa? So it's really huge, and we're talking billions of euros of trade a year potentially, and also billions of jobs across all of Africa. Slowly, slowly. Slower, slower, slower. Whoa. I envision her in some ways a little bit like myself, is that she is going to have to fight in a way to have a world that she wants to live in. And I think that struggle, that fight, there's a beauty to it as well. I see her as a fighter to some degree, but in a joyful way, I hope, that she can see that this process, the struggle moving forward is one of hope and bringing people together. And when it happens, it's beautiful, it's amazing. You get whole communities together and all of a sudden you feel like there is a place for you. There is a place to grow and live and grow old and die, and that's a beautiful process, and it's not one of isolation and struggle or competition. Traditional development in Kenya has been coming in with donor funds and kind of imposing an idea of what the future looks like on a community, and essentially treating them as ignorant people. And a lot of these funds go to projects that, the next year end up being completely defunct. They don't work at all. Also, that's created a huge amount of dependency in communities. They expect donors to come in with money. So our version of development with grassroots economics is that the communities need to develop, period. It's their job, it's their responsibility, and it's us to just empower them however we can to do that work themselves. Really, we're creating here is sort of a decentralized banking system that's based from the ground up on communities. So when they join the network, they receive 400 shillings worth of these. Half of that they keep into a community pot now. They vote every month to every few months on what they want to use the community fund for. And generally it's waste collection or helping kids through school or doing big buffet lunches for the elderly in the community or sporting events, things like that.
We are going to give each player 200, and the winner, the one who is going to play better, how much are we going to give him? 400?
They have the vision of the future. They know what they want for their children. They know what they can envision for their community. It's not us to impose that. And there's plenty of very, very intelligent people in these communities that have been working most of their lives for the betterment of the community, and really those people need to be supported and given tools to do so. All these projects are still really young. We have 5 now in Kenya and then 2 more in South Africa. And then there's countries all around and communities all around that are asking for these projects to start. It looks like they're going to continue going. There's nothing stopping them. But we'll see in the next 10 years. Are they growing? Are they sustainable? Are they inspiring more and more communities? To me, it's like we're building a foundation. It's like building the infrastructure for the internet. We're building the infrastructure for trade, essentially, and for exchange. The model we did works here quite well. For it to work in Belgium, it's going to need a few tweaks here or there. But I think there's a huge opportunity for especially young people to see this as a way of creating employment in their communities and kind of flipping the economy on its head and saying that, you know, we're the economy and we're the ones backing our own money. So I think it's something anyone can do. Really it is.